Today is Juneteenth, and it's all about celebrating Black history, joy, freedom, and resilience. There are tons of events all around the North Country this weekend to celebrate the holiday that commemorates the end of slavery in the U.S. Before emancipation came, the abolitionist movement fought to end slavery. And at the time, it was a controversial position that divided communities. Those movements also grew here in the North Country. We'll learn all about how it took root in St. Lawrence County on today's Story of the Day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Clarkson University, offering over 95 programs of study with campuses in the Hudson Valley, Central, and Northern New York. More at clarkson.edu.
Hey, I'm Catherine Wheeler, and for David Summerstein, it's Friday, June 19th. First up, the slogan used to be, if you're out of Schlitz, you're out of beer. Well, Schlitz beer, once the largest brewer in America, is ceasing production. The news will hit especially hard for one woman in St. Lawrence County. For decades, she's collected Schlitz memorabilia. David Summerstein visited her Schlitz museum back in 2011.
Okay, hi, my name's Michelle Whalen. We're pretty close to Morristown on the St. Lawrence River. I live here with my wife Valerie. And it's a 162 square foot closet, but half of it is dedicated to all of my Schlitz memorabilia. I paid $20 for this light in Florida, probably 20 years ago. And I paid $20 for that Schlitz neon. The white is broken, but I paid $20 for that. But everything else has been given to me. I mean, there's 4 or 5 of the flashlights. There's every kind of glass you can imagine. There's old bottles. There's salt and pepper shakers. There's lights. There's clocks. There's little cans. Who is this woman that's holding the globe, and the globe is surrounded by the Schlitz emblem? I mean, when you're out of Schlitz, you're out of beer, right? This bottle, Carrie DeMars gave me. It was bottled in Ogdensburg by Arnold and Company. It's like ancient. I've been drinking Schlitz since August 30th, 1972. Yeah, I was drinking with my friends Bugsy and Susie down at their camp, and everybody drank Schlitz in 1972. It was like top of the line. It was good beer.
What is that?
They're coasters.
What?
They're coasters. They're little Schlitz coasters. See, it looks like a beer bottle, but the back comes out, and there's about 6 coasters in here. When you're out of Schlitz, you're out of beer. It is the absolute best beer. I mean, it's water to me. If there was no other beer on earth, if they said, no, we can't make Schlitz anymore, I'd take it again as a sign from God that I'm not supposed to drink beer anymore. This light, I think I stole this light from my friend Floss. She's okay with it now, though. But these were...
Michelle Whalen of Morristown in her Schlitz Museum speaking with David Summerstein in 2011. So, of course, the question is, what is Michelle going to do now that Schlitz is going out of production? David called her back, and she says she has enough Schlitz to last until October.
Since I'm only drinking 1 or 2 beer a day. It's not like I'm drinking a 6-pack a day even. I'm drinking 1 or 2 beers, 2 on a hot summer day. I love the taste of beer, and I hate to quit drinking, and I really don't like other beers after drinking Schlitz for almost 54 years. It'll be 54 years at the end of August.
Is Schlitz that much of a difference from like Miller Lite or something like that?
Oh God, no light beer. If all there was light beer on earth, then I truly would quit drinking beer. When you've been drinking something religiously for 54 years, it's what tastes the best to me.
Has anybody given you recommendations of what you should do?
I have a cousin who suggested I drink champagne, and so obviously she doesn't drink any alcohol or much beer because the difference between champagne and Schlitz or any beer is pretty significant. Beer is special. I mean, I've got, David, do you remember from years ago doing that first interview with me? I've got an 8x10 picture of my dad and his Army Air Force buddies all sitting around a table, all in their uniform, and all drinking Schlitz beer. And that was back in the early 50s. So when you're out of Schlitz, you're out of beer. And in early October, I will be out of I'll be out of beer. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Schlitz superfan Michelle Whalen speaking with David Summerstein. She says, by the way, her Schlitz Museum memorabilia is for sale, and she's taking offers. Today is Juneteenth. The federal holiday commemorates the day in 1865 when Union troops arrived in Galveston, Texas, and told the last enslaved African Americans that they were free, more than 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. In the decades before emancipation, some North Country residents advocated for the end of slavery at a time when it wasn't popular. The town of DeKalb's historian Brian Thompson says the first evidence of abolition work in St. Lawrence County comes from a sermon at the Potsdam Presbyterian Church in 1826.
And the only reason we know about it was because the text of the sermon was published in a New York City black newspaper.
Thompson says there aren't any mentions of abolition in the local press, even years after the movement started. He says it wasn't considered decent to talk about. Soon, though, a few anti-slavery societies popped up in Bucksbridge and in Potsdam. Then, in the mid-1830s, the Free Will Baptist religious movement spread around the Northeast, making its way to St. Lawrence County by way of a black minister who moved to Hopkinton and preached. In 1837, Free Will Baptist members were called on to do everything they could to advocate for the end of slavery.
They gradually spread throughout northern New York. There was one in Herman at one time, in DeKalb. North Lawrence was the headquarters for a major area, and Fowler. And so those areas where the Free Will Baptists are, you start to find people circulating anti-slavery petitions and submitting them to the federal government.
Thompson says it wasn't easy to be an abolitionist at this time. Racism was common here.
If you looked at, say, the Malone newspapers in the 1830s, somebody who was an abolitionist was always followed with the word scallywag. They were not well thought of.
He says even after slavery ended in New York State, few black families were able to buy land and settle in St. Lawrence County. Even later, in the 1920s, the Ku Klux Klan took hold in the area. Before that, Thompson says the abolitionist movement in St. Lawrence County was comprised of everyday people. They weren't particularly wealthy or powerful. They simply had strong moral convictions.
The abolitionists were small-town farmers, shoemakers, small industrialists, people who didn't have a financial stake in dealing with the South and the cotton trade, etc., or depended on keeping their money secure in some New York City bank. It was just the local people, the local working people who were the abolitionists. And that's true not just here. If you look at the abolitionist movement throughout the northeastern United States, they were the people that were the abolitionists.
Thompson says the history of the movement shows how public sentiment can change, especially when a small group of people who are dogged in their beliefs continues to push despite ridicule and mistreatment.
I think too many people think that for change to happen, it has to happen through upper status people, and and in fact, both the women's rights movement and the abolitionist movement show us that it's regular, ordinary citizens that can make a change when they stand up.
Thompson says you can find out if your St. Lawrence County ancestors were a part of the abolitionist movement. The New York State Genealogical and Biographical Society houses the St. Lawrence County Abolitionist Database, another way to connect to our local history. We have more news on our website, ncpr.org, and a reminder that early voting ends this Sunday for Tuesday's primaries. You can contact your local Board of Elections for polling locations and times. Music today is from the Bee Children in Canton and Lucas Garrett of Glens Falls. I'm Catherine Wheeler, North Country Public Radio.